Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Chalk Talk podcast presented to you by capwizard.io with your host, Panz and Ches. Really, the goal to this podcast is to provide a collaborative discussion about the intricacies around the hockey world.
The way that we look into hockey is more through an analytical and a business lens. We're trying to get a different viewpoint to try and solve the puzzle for the sport that we all know and love.
Well, looking forward to providing you a lot of content for a long period of time here, on different avenues, right? We do have a Twitter page. It is capwizard.io. We advise you follow, like, share, retweet, whatever you can here, as that will be providing daily content that'll coincide with the the discussion and a podcast content that we're going to be putting out here on Spotify. We look forward to expanding into YouTube as well as Instagram, but for now we do operate on Twitter, and we're going to be producing regular weekly segments here on Spotify to discuss everything that's happening around the hockey world. And without further ado, let's dive into it. Want to start off by our news and recent happenings around the hockey world. Today, September 3rd, the Edmonton Oilers and Leon Draisaitl reached an extensive, monumental agreement, some would say, on a contract extension that is an 8-year by $14 million AAV. So that comes out to $112 million. Although that's not the largest contract size that we've seen yet, it will be the largest AAV any player is making when that contract comes into effect in the year 2025-2026. So after this season, when that takes effect, he will be the highest paid player in the league. What are your thoughts on that, Pans?
Well, to be quite honest, I think it's an amazing signing by the Edmonton Oilers. I think it's an amazing contract for Leon himself. Absolutely well-deserved. He is one of the premier players in the NHL that drives fans to games. He is absolutely electric. It's crazy to think about what he would do without McDavid, but to have two of the top 5 players in the world, in my opinion, on the same team for the next however many years is just great for the sport. And Draisaitl is well-deserving of this large payout. To put it into perspective, his first full season at the age of 19, he goes out and puts up 51 points in 72 games. The next season,
wow, that's crazy.
29 goals and 48 assists for 77 points in all 82 regular season games as a 20-year-old. And the sky's the limit for this guy. He's absolutely incredible. Basically a left-handed Ovechkin with an even greater passing ability. And he is just bringing the Oilers higher and higher. One last little tidbit I'd like to say about Draisaitl is he is electric in the playoffs. He currently has 41 goals and 67 assists in 74 games for a total of 108 points.
Wow.
Well-deserved contract.
108 points in how many playoff games?
74.
Holy shit, man. That's crazy. That's dominance. And I think he came out and said something today. He loves nothing more than wearing that jersey. And, if I was an Edmonton Oiler fan, everyone was kind of biting their nails a little bit, waiting for something like this to happen. But, it's really great to have a guy like that on your team as a leader. We all know how strong of a year they had, hoisting the Lord Stanley's Cup by 1 goal. I mean, what a comeback, what a beautiful Stanley Cup series that was. But, I mean, people like Leon Draisaitl really helped that, throughout the entire season when it comes to leading. And really just wanted to kind of shift gears here and talk about what that might mean for the team moving forward, as well as, McDavid's deal, right? Something that we want to do here for our audience is actually do a grading system for all of the contract negotiations that are happening throughout the hockey world. We like to provide that as a a differentiator between us and some of the other things in the space, because we do have a heavy prospect development lens, and that's a side of the game we really want to put some emphasis on. But before we go into that, what are your thoughts on what this could mean for McDavid re-signing here in the next year or so?
So it puts a bigger emphasis, sadly, on that AAV number. In my opinion, McDavid is the best player in the world. He has been for quite some time, so I believe he should chase that top dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in his best interest. It is what he is worth. But at the same time, I do completely believe in kind of taking one for the team and taking a little bit less AAV so the team can spend a little more to try and get those high-end players that are necessary for a long Stanley Cup run. Though with
I agree.
The salary cap growing more and more over the next few years, it's tough to say how much, but we're looking about 5 to 10 years away from the salary cap being 100 mil and over. So
yeah,
it'll be tough to see how things pan out with contracts in general. But this should only drive up McDavid's price. And if he were to stay in Edmonton, then it'll be tough cap financing in the future, especially with Bouchard, who I believe is going to be getting at least 10 mil.
Yeah, no, I love that point. Bouchard and McDavid are two pieces that if I were an Oilers fan and if I were in the Oilers front office, I'd want them locked in just as long as Leon. I think you brought up a great point when it came to, smaller contracts. I did hear a rumor this offseason that there was some conversations in the locker room there, just talking from all different players around that organization, potentially, accepting the fact that it might be better to take a lower AAV, to be able to have a guy like Leon and Connor locked into your roster long term. They understand they were there. They were practically Stanley Cup winners. I mean, they just missed it. They have the caliber to do it. Why not chase it, right? I mean, think about guys like Sidney Crosby. For most of his career, he's taken a pay cut to be friendly. Think about guys like Patrice Bergeron, who's playing two-way game better than anyone in the league in our lifetime, arguably ever. Sometimes some people might even say, and they were taking very team-friendly deals. Look at a guy like Zach Hyman on that team right now. $5 million AAV for a guy like that. I mean, that right now, in my opinion, is the greatest contract in the league. And there might be some that disagree or have some other ones that they would put up next to it. But a guy like that, for as stellar of a season as he's had, incredible. I know you did mention the cap going up. Who knows, man? I think you said 5 to 10 years. This cap could be at 100 million sooner than that. I mean, look at it now. It's at 88 million. It's about 4.5 million higher than what it was last season. That's such an exciting piece. I mean, when you think about it from a lens of all the major four sports, we all know that hockey, the hockey fans in the world understand that, NHL players make significantly less. In fact, I saw a stat today that Leon's 14 million per year is equivalent to the 116th highest paid NBA player in the league. I mean, that's crazy for someone who's not necessarily playing any minutes or very few to make as much as one of the best and most highest paid players in the NHL. It's just how it works. But it's more important, and it talks, it really speaks volumes to how GMs have to navigate the cap, navigate, an entire roster through development, as well as making sure that they can afford those players as they grow and fit into their, future framework and success that they're shooting for. So, without further ado, let's do the grading, man. What would you grade this contract?
So that's the tough part. We are still trying to work out our grading system here, so bear with us for what entails a good high grade. But for right now, I'd say it's a solid 9.5 out of 10. He's definitely worth the money. He is one of the absolute best players in the world right now, in my opinion, he's the best German hockey player of all time. I'm going to go back to this comparison one more time. He is a lefty Ovechkin, absolute incredible shot. He has the hands to go with it and a really great passing ability. His only downside is lack of speed, but he uses that to his advantage with his puck control and his just general body movement, being able to box guys out and just use his weight to his advantage.
I agree. That you said 9.5 out of 10. I mean, personally, I put it no less than 9 out of 10. I would, in that same ballpark, a 9.5 out of 10. We can certainly be revisiting all of these, but looking at Leon Draisaitl, his game is so important and so hard to beat. It's the 1-2 punch of him with that power forward body and that insane shot, as well as his incredible passing skills on top of the unmatched speed of Connor McDavid. I mean, there's no wonder the Edmonton Oilers are a scary team. I don't care who you are a fan of. If you're not an Oilers fan, I would be afraid of playing the Oilers. And he's certainly a factor into that. But moving forward, we also did have another re-signing this week that was pretty exciting. One that's worth mentioning here. The Carolina Hurricanes. They just had a strong re-signing with their young future piece, Seth Jarvis. They re-signed Seth Jarvis to an 8-year, $7.9 million contract. So 7.9 AAV, that is, for the former 13th overall pick in the 2020 draft. What are your thoughts there?
So another great signing this offseason. It's I feel sorry that we have to do this one right after doing Draisaitl, but Seth Jarvis is an amazing young player. He has that type of snarl for being a younger guy, kind of like a Marchand Brendan Gallagher type. And like the two of them, he has great offensive ability. He started out in the NHL playing 68 games as a 19-year-old, putting up 40 points. Year 2, he stayed right around there, playing with that 40-point pace, even though he played in some more games. But this last season, his 3rd year in the NHL, he had absolute tremendous growth, what you're looking for from any prospect. He played in 81 of the 82 regular season games, and he put up 33 goals and 34 assists for a solid 67 points in his 3rd full season.
Oh, wow.
For his AAV, I think this is another great contract, though he could have gotten maybe a little bit more on the open market from other teams with more cap space. I think this is a good fit for him and the Carolina Hurricanes. A good young guy who can grow into an even bigger contract. I truly believe that he will, but for the time being, I think this is a solid 8. He could have gotten more. Carolina honestly could have afforded to give him more, but I think this is good for both sides. Great young player. We'll see how it develops in the near future.
Yeah, man. I love that take, honestly. I would honestly venture to say it's maybe closer to that 8.5 range out of 10, just because, 7.9, as we talk about with the raising cap, give it 2, 3 years, 4 years. He might be playing way higher than that. That's, going to be towards his prime. He's going to be heavily leaned on more so in the special teams than he has been, and I'm sure he'll be a strong piece for them in the center as well. He does have some big shoes to fill, not necessarily, but they did lose Jake Gensel this offseason, so I do see that Seth Jarvis taking even more responsibility in the next few years here. But I did want to kind of draw to this contract to kind of a comparison to another contract we had in the hockey world here earlier this summer. In June, Juraj Slafkovsky and the Canadiens reached a strong contract extension and agreement for the former first overall pick of the 2022 draft, which was similar in length. It's 8 years by $7.6 million, so a little less on the AAV. But you're looking at a 20-year-old who just produced 50 points, 20 goals, and 30 assists, coming off a league where he didn't come from a league that had a lot of scoring. So a lot of naysayers came about when it came to whether or not his game can translate into the NHL. I feel like that debate is certainly now, larger than it ever has been about, European players and the style and how each and every junior league plays a little differently into how it translates into, professional NHL hockey. But what are your thoughts on that comparison? And would you grade Slavkovsky's any better than Seth Jarvis? And I guess if you had a choice between Seth or Slavkovsky, which one you'd prefer to if you had to choose one over the other?
I think it's a very good comparison comparing the Jarvis contract to Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky got his slightly a year or two earlier than Jarvis did, but that kind of comes with being a first overall pick is you're a little bit more trusted than a 13th overall just right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Slavkovsky is a very interesting player due to his size and speed and skill ability. Overall, though they're very comparable, I think I would have to take Slavkovsky just for what his ceiling could be.
Mm-hmm.
We already have a general understanding of where Jarvis is and where he's heading. Slavkovsky still has a lot of room where he could grow to be a very impactful player in the NHL for a long time. I'm excited to watch both of them. Hopefully Jarvis puts me in my place and proves me wrong. But as of right now, I think I would take Slavkovsky with these two contracts just for what he could be.
That's a great point. It's hard to choose, right? They're strong comparison when it comes to similarities in contracts. I mean, if you think about it, you also have to factor in the team, right? Carolina was a cup contender the last few years. Not necessarily sure if everyone would consider them as strong or as scary of a team as they were coming in to the season last year, as they are coming in this year. But looking at Slavkovsky's team, you're working with the Montreal Canadiens, who they've clearly been going through a rebuild. Martin St. Louis is an incredible coach with incredible skill and experience to draw from, and it's clear that he's been having an incredible impact on these youngsters. Think about guys like Cole Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Suzuki. Now they have Lane Hudson on the mix in the back end and David Reinbacher. They have a whole lot of young talent on that team, so it will be fun to watch them grow, together. But more importantly, I would probably agree with you. I would take Slavkovsky over Seth for that same reason of, I don't think we've seen Slavkovsky's game to the max. Jarvis, we've seen a lot. We've gotten a better taste of, I believe, just because of sheer time. But the Canadians could very well be pushing for a playoff spot. If it's not this season, you can't count them out the following. And I think they're certainly a team that can really, impress this season and years to come. Especially once they nail down that blue line in terms of its depth and defensively get a little stronger in their own end. I see them as a strong team in the next few years to be one of these, dynasties, right? That's the whole point. The move is to have a dynasty. You don't want to be a one and done team. And that's a team that's, as of a few years ago, really started that process. To get strong prospects, get strong picks, and bring in players that are going to complement one another. And I got to give kudos to Martin St. Louis. He's done an incredible job with all those players, and looking forward to seeing what can come. But moving forward from that, there is another piece of news that dropped here recently in the hockey world. The American Hockey League, the AHL, confirmed neck guard requirements for all players. Now, this happened about a week or so ago, but what are your thoughts on that one, Panz?
So, this is a tough one. I see both sides of the coin here. Though it is not completely necessary for the sport of hockey, I think it is worth it to take away any extreme injuries that we can. That's the whole reason we wear equipment, is to stay safe, and that's all this will ever do. I don't think any injuries will ever come from somebody wearing a neck guard. It will only prevent more serious injuries from occurring. I think this is a good thing. that I would like to see other pro leagues, including the NHL, start to implement as well, because player safety is what matters most. Yes, this is the sport that we all love to watch, but when it comes down to it, this is just a job for them. They
Mm-hmm.
have families and friends to go home to live full lives with, and at the end of the day, that's what we should all be focused on, is the safety and security of the NHL and its players and the longevity of their lives after their careers.
I agree. I did think it was interesting. And, Hockey Canada has had this rule instilled for quite some time for everyone under the age of 18 being required to have net guards. I mean, you think about like TJ Oshie and his brand, War Road Hockey. And, I believe now it's a choice, of course, in the league, and more players are starting to change their mindset to wearing it. I know growing up, I couldn't even fathom that because, it's a little tight around the neck, or it's uncomfortable, but I think that's well worth getting used to over, a season, career, or life-threatening injury,
No, I,
dare I say it, comes about.
I
You
completely
know,
agree there. And sadly, I'm sorry to chime in, but it's the American in us. It doesn't look cool.
oh my God, I hate hearing that,
I
dude.
didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say it.
Everyone says it
The
doesn't look good.
American kid in us that literally says, no, I'm not wearing glasses out there. I'm not wearing a neck guard.
Yep, I think that's funny. I think it's childish. If they want to choose to wear a neck guard to be safe, so they know that they can go home to their kids, and they want to raise their kids in the same way of, you want to wear hockey skates and play some puck with dad, or you want to go down that road in life, like, you should be wearing a neck guard. I'd be dumb as a parent to not put that in your bag. I mean, you as a goalie growing up, I know that goalies can't really survive without net guards, but even think about how the goalies have developed. Jacques Plante was not even wearing a mask, and now they have full masks. And Tuukka Rask used to have the longer one that even covered the neck, and then they had the plastic shields that helped with the neck guards. And there's all these different technologies and updates to padding and protection to, again, keep the longevity of our game going, and limit the amount of course, casualties, but seriously affecting injuries that can happen. And we don't want to lose another player like we did in the last few years in regards to neck injuries. So, interesting to see that. Yeah, yeah. What was his name? Do you remember him?
I do not, but I do remember it was in that top English league, the EIHL.
It's unfortunate.
So another comparison that I'm sure we'll eventually have a discussion debate about in the coming episodes, but I didn't make the comparison until right now, is the visor debate at like the age of 17, 18, playing in juniors.
Interesting.
And it's, once again, going back to the American wanting to be cool at all times, it comes with a hefty price. So the one example I have, in practice, routine, playing at the front of the net, it's a far pad shot. So my buddy Keegan, he goes to direct it to the corner. It rode up on his stick, went right to my buddy's jaw.
Oh.
It was his third skate ever wearing a visor.
No.
Yeah, and that was his final one, wearing a visor.
I mean, that's tragic, and I can attest too. Like, I tell you this all the time when we play men's league, bud. Like, every time someone goes, why do you have a cage? Why aren't you wearing a visor? Why aren't you wearing a bubble? Or, I always think maybe I can do no cage. Maybe I can do a small visor or something like that. And then every single time I think that, I get a high stick in the head. It's like that game is like clockwork. And you know what? That's enough for me to say I'd rather keep my chicklets. I got a day job. I don't want to lose teeth, have any facial surgeries or reconstruction that I can avoid. There's no reason. We're all we're all just having our own, we're all just living our own life, I should say, when it comes to that. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. I do like that comparison though, because I don't necessarily see it happening soon. Same with the net guard with regards to the mandate in the NHL, but it's happening. Things are developing for the AHL to come out with this. It certainly can bring some interesting conversations and debates here in the coming years. Unfortunately, I do see it getting mandated in the NHL if something serious does happen, if some serious injuries do come about from the upper torso neck area. Obviously, we want to hope for that to never happen. We understand the history with Clint Malarchuk and that scary life threatening situation where his neck was slit open as a goaltender, and within if it was the other team reacting and it wasn't the other bench that got to him first, he could have been dead. But that's just stuff that if we can nix that and get that out of the game, everyone wins. So
it should never be a part of the game. And though 18-year-old me would not agree with current me, I think it should be implemented for that reason. Is if we can take this final destination type of death out of the game, I think we should at any cause.
Now, let's move forward. There is a sad and heavy piece of news that did happen over this last weekend, Labor Day. Introducing and mentioning, as many have heard, we did lose two incredibly bright, incredibly, just positive individuals, men, leaders, hockey players in the hockey world, in Johnny and Matt Gaudreau this past weekend. Over Labor Day, they were hit by a drunk driver while they were biking. It actually was a day before they were set to be groomsmen for their sister's wedding in Philly. Just a terribly, terribly sad event. I know I woke up and got a text from my brother saying Johnny Hockey died, and I just I didn't even believe it. Right? What do you mean? And then you hear it, and it just shatters you. And it doesn't matter who you are. To lose someone like that at such a young age with such great promise, both him and his brother Matt, it's tragic. It's great. I will say it's really great to see all the outpour of love and support that the Gaudreau family has received, as well as just that incredible memorial that the Scotiabank Saddle Dome has outside of it. It's just grown immensely day over day. It's just gotten bigger and bigger. And I know their GM Conroy here was just talking about that earlier today. And it's just, it hit everyone, whether you're a hockey fan or just a sports fan or just a human being. It was just great to see teams from all over the world, all different sports, all different players providing, a moment of silence and some respect and love to two fallen, incredible leaders and incredible men that we lost way too soon. I think Lanny McDonald's, quote was something almost brought me to tears. He said, I'll summarize it. I'm not going to go word for word, but he said, two great individuals, two great hockey players are going up to, hockey heaven a little earlier than everyone would have expected. But don't worry, the hockey greats are going to take care of you up there. Go easy on them. I can already tell Johnny Hockey's going to be running circles around some of those greats, and we're all going to miss him. He's an incredible player, incredible father, incredible husband, incredible individual, and everyone, everyone shed a little bit of a tear there when that news broke. But our thoughts and prayers and love go out to the Gaudreau family, friends, and loved ones, we just hope for nothing like this to ever happen again.
Absolutely heartbreaking news for us to hear this week. I know that day was completely ruined for me hearing that news in the morning. I can't imagine what the family and close friends are going through, and our condolences are with all of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Ryan, but for me, this kind of hit close to home, being the fact that Johnny was close from home. He's from Salem, New Jersey. It's an hour 15 drive from where you and I grew up. Mm-hmm. And he played Philadelphia Little Flyers and Team Comcast, two of our local 4 or 5 AAA teams we have in the area.
Yeah. And he was a
Yeah,
stud for someone so small. He was such a
and
threat,
I know everybody's seen the videos recently of him as a kid because that's how amazing he was. Is that early 2000s video was kept and stored because of how great this little kid was, and it was always heartwarming. You wanted to cheer for him as the underdog, the little guy, and the fact that he was always just so happy. It was truly just, he lit up a room, and you could see it just in the way he talked, the way he smiled. Everybody always wanted to be around him, and not just the hockey world, but the whole world lost a truly great human being in John and in Matt. With one, there was not the other.
I couldn't agree more, man. What a sad piece of news to wake up to. I'll say that he really defied and just broke through the barrier that a lot of scouts have in all the sports, not necessarily just hockey, but oh, you're too short, you're not good enough. Yeah, I'm short, but I might be the quickest out there. I might have some incredible skills that you might not even have the wherewithal or the open-mindedness to see in me, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's just that go-getter mindset that he's had. And both him and his brother Matt, they will both be missed. I've heard incredible stories online from Matt as well with regards to some of the third-party perspectives of players he's had the opportunity to play with, and just what a selfless individual he was as well as Johnny. And again, condolences go out to the Gaudreau family there. And all of the loved ones, everyone on the Columbus Blue Jackets roster, and everyone who's ever had the opportunity and pleasure to get to know the Gaudreau family. But anyways, without further ado, let's dive into the analysis piece of this podcast to shift gears, bring it a little more into the bright side of things here. We're going to be doing a deep dive into each and every team leading up to the start of the season on Puck Drop of October 4th. Remember, please follow, retweet, interact however you want on our Twitter page, because we're actually going to be doing a day-by-day series, team by team, leading up. So there's a countdown of 32 days. Today, September 3rd, we started with Anaheim Ducks. We're going to kick that off today. We're going to go through 3 teams today, and in the next few episodes, we're going to be providing a large chunk of the league to be ready to go and provide you all with the right breakdown and analysis, so you're ready to go come puck drop on the first game here in this season. But let's go into it. First and foremost, Anaheim Ducks. Panz, you want to start us off with the key players?
Yep, so with the Ducks, I have, starting out, Leo Carlson. He is absolute bright future. I see him very similar to Leon Draisaitl in his skill set of a very heavy shot, which will get almost any goalie in the world. A good skill set for hands and passing, but just a really heavy shot, and he's going to, I think, make a solid step forward this season. Going with him, we got Troy Terry, who has shown the past couple of years how solid of a top 6 forward he can be. Trevor Zegras, he had somewhat of a down season, but I think he'll also step up this year. Frank Vetrano, another solid veteran who is really keeping the team together and helping these young guys grow into solid roles. My last 2, Mason McTavish, one of the best youngsters in the league at the moment, only good things going forward, and one of my absolute favorite prospect defensemen, Minty Yukov, one of the most elite offensive defensemen since Cale Makar, in my opinion.
Wow.
Those are the key players that I have for the Ducks. Did I miss out on any, Chester?
Hey, man, I would agree. It's really exciting to have guys like Minty Yukov, Carlson, Zegras, McTavish. They're all so young, right? Like people like Terry and Vetrano are going to really help, boost their game up. They're great support systems. I wouldn't necessarily put them as the key pieces for the future of the Anaheim Ducks, but I would mention, Ryan Strome and Alex Killorn. They're two very strong veteran pieces. I would also make the argument Cam Fowler can be on this list. Not that he's the greatest defenseman in the league by a lot of people's standards. I think he's a great two-way defender, as well as Killorn and Strome being just supportive veterans to add to these young players. I mean, the Anaheim Ducks are such a young roster. They have every team has their flaws, but having disciplined players like Killorn, who's won cups, has been in a contending situation for years with Tampa. I mean, that's an experience that you'd want in your locker room as you see people like Leo Carlson, Zegras, McTavish. They got Cutter, Gauthier. Like, those are people, you need someone to help those players grow and shine, and these are great pieces. But I agree with you. Looking into some of the prospects, let's list some of their top prospects. Anaheim's top prospects. First and foremost, we're going to mention their first round pick this year, Beckett Seneca. I think it's funny because I think we all saw that video of how shocked he was when he got drafted. Really exciting to see a young guy like that feel excitement and kind of taken back by getting drafted into the NHL. That's everyone's dream, right? I think he and everyone that was watching was taken back and really excited for him. Looking forward to seeing him grow. Another player that I truly like on the blue line, on top of Minty Yukov, is Olin Zellweger. Talk about a really good player. Another first round pick they got a few years back. Another centerpiece for this next few years. During the rebuild, the Anaheim Ducks have done a great job of stocking up on youth, and Olin Zellweger on the blue line is someone to certainly look for. I would say Cutter Gauthier is another player. We understand the crazy happenings with Philadelphia Flyers and Cutter last season. We just hope all that is water under the bridge at this point, and we look forward to seeing some exciting hockey with all these youngsters in the mix. Was there anyone else I missed there on the prospect end there, Panz?
So on the prospect end, with their previous playoff history and draft history, they've had a lot of good prospects over the last couple of years. So I believe you got the good top ones that they offered, but a couple of other key ones that I think would be higher in the depth charts for other organizations. Kale Klang, the Swedish goaltender, I think can make another solid performance in the AHL this year and kind of force himself into an NHL role soon. And then I have three older AHL guys. I say older on the prospect end of getting between 23 to 25. Nikita Nesterenko, former BC forward. Drew Hellison, he was a big Team USA World Junior defenseman. And also with Team USA World Juniors, Sasha Pastujov. Three guys who, if it doesn't really work that well in the AHL this year, they might be moving to other organizations. So we'll see how it pans out with those three, but they all have a very solid skill set, including Kale Klang, the goalie. Those are four other guys that I truly like in the Ducks prospect pool as well.
Yeah, I like that. Three older prospects who may have been there for a few years, but certainly have an upside that, if it's not in Anaheim, it can certainly be somewhere else. They can help, grow a lot of different ways in their game. I think something or two players that we certainly forgot about here, Jackson Lacombe and Lucas Dostal. Lucas Dostal, just right off the bat, he's shown incredible promise last season. There is quite a lot of rumors, quite a lot of back and forth on Gibson's future in Anaheim. I would be very excited, regardless of the happenings on Gibson's front, with Dostal as the option to lean on moving forward. Dostal is going to be an exciting piece, for the future. And as you mentioned, Kale Klang could certainly fit into that, backup role behind Dostal one day. No saying whether or not that trade will be happening, or any trade for that matter will happen with Gibson this offseason or this season. But, Dostal seems to be a strong candidate to to fill that role, or certainly take a 1A 1B approach there. Just in general, some notes I have on this offseason. The Ducks, they got a little bit older. Allows this chemistry to grow. You got guys like Zegras who are looking for a bounce back year. Guys like Leo Carlson who are looking for that big breakout season. Guys like Troy Terry and Vetrano who are looking to keep up their strong productivity two-way game. But at the same time, if they can even keep up close to what they were doing and help players like Cutter Gauthier, help players like Minty Yukov, help players like Zegras and other young players, come out of their shell even more, like Leo Carlson as well. There's no reason this team, can't be a threat in the West, in the Pacific. Now, I don't necessarily see them making playoffs this season. That's fine. But I do give it a very exciting future. And, I don't think we're actually mentioning and putting emphasis on someone like Mason McTavish. He's a great player. He's a great center. He's done incredible things for the World Juniors team up in Canada. He's just an incredible player that, add him into this strong list of prospects. I would put the Anaheim's youth at one of the best in the league, and their rebuild is certainly looking strong here. And it'll be exciting. If they were to make playoffs, I would say Leo Carlson, Gauthier, Zegras, and McTavish are the big four in the offense that need to have stellar seasons. That's aside from Terry and Vetrano. I would also mention that Minty Yukov, Zellweger, and Fowler need to be the workhorses on the blue line there. Of course, more consistency in net is obviously going to help them there. Anything I missed there? Anything you'd add there, Pants?
I had myself muted, sorry.
It's all good.
It was more what I missed previously, but you did add in. Yes, there are so many solid young prospects coming out of Anaheim. I forgot to speak on Jackson Lacombe, a very skilled two-way defender. I believe came out of University of Minnesota. A solid defensive prospect coming out of Anaheim. And the other goalie, Lucas Dostal, who has almost forced Gibson out of his starting role with the Anaheim Ducks. I'm very excited to see Dostal's growth, and I've always been a big fan of John Gibson, so I hope he either outperforms what he has previously been doing, or he's able to move to a different organization to try to reset and be the 1A we all know he can be. But no, I completely agree. Anaheim's getting a little bit older, bringing in some solid vets to teach this young core how to play, how to win. This is another solid step forward in the rebuild for Anaheim, and I truly think next offseason will be the key test to where this franchise is going.
Great point there, Pans. I couldn't really agree with you more there. It's going to be an exciting next few years for Anaheim Ducks fans. Wanted to talk about some concerns. There are some potential trade pieces and rumors that we like to just throw out there. Nothing stapled into existence, nothing certain, but of course, there are rumblings about Gibson. We've also heard some rumblings about Zegras potentially being moved. No say whether that'll actually happen or whether both players or either player is dead set on that happening either. But those could be potential trade options for the team to look for, in the coming months and years. I'm not sure if that'll happen during this season or potentially in the off season there. But I would say, looking at concerns to watch for, during this analysis breakdown of each team, we want to talk about, something that we drew from their game last season that we need to watch and hopefully look for improvements on, because, everyone can grow and be better in one aspect or at least a few in their game as a team. And I just, pulling from last season, consistent defense is crucial. Gibson and Dostal are fine, but if they're spending majority of their time in their own zone, the Ducks are going to inevitably give up a lot of goals. I would say discipline. We'll go into some of the stats behind discipline there. But discipline, staying out of the box, any team can say that. But I think this team, more than anyone, certainly needs to grow in that sector. And really, I'd just say consistent depth scoring. Zegras not having as strong of a season as he was expected or his ceiling provides. Last season was potentially not a helper on the team success. Now McTavish stepped out of his shell and he's proven to be potentially one of the best players in Anaheim history and can be. If he continues his growth, which is saying a lot with people like the Niedermeyer and Solani and Paul Correa that they've had in their history. McTavish can certainly be one of those echelon players down the line if he continues his growth. And I would just say special teams, and that goes to discipline there. But did you want to cover some interesting stats we pulled there from last season, Panz?
Yep, so I have a couple of interesting stats here. The Ducks had the third worst goals against in the league at 3.57 goals against.
Oh, per game?
Per game.
Wow. Third worst.
And I think a key contributor to that was the fact that they were the worst team in the NHL for penalty minutes with 1,108.
Whoa.
That's 106 more penalty minutes than the second place Florida Panthers.
And they won the cup.
Yeah. So,
wow.
Being in the sin bin did not work out the same way for the Ducks that it did for the Panthers, but I thought that was...
That's alarming.
Maybe the stat of the summer that I saw.
And I agree with you. I think, even with the goals against per game, teams like Edmonton were up there on that list as well. But, when you have goals against, but you have people like Leon, you have people like McDavid and Hyman and all the Nugent Hopkins, all their pieces, Ekholm, it makes up for it. They're scoring. Whereas Anaheim necessarily wasn't getting as many scoring opportunities, or they weren't putting in those opportunities that they had. And mixed with that, I mean, holy cow. I see right now the third place team in terms of penalty minutes was Minnesota Wild at 938. Holy cow, you're looking at almost 200 minutes more than the third place team in terms of penalty minutes. I mean, wow. That is a lot of time in the sin bin, a lot of time penalty killing in your own zone. No wonder any goalie is going to have a tough task and a tough hill to climb with that, no matter the defense and team around him. Certainly some interesting stats there. But let's, we're curious what your thoughts are. Please feel free to, comment, tag us on Twitter if there's any comments you'd have, anybody you'd add that we might have missed. We're curious to hear what your thoughts are. Please feel free to reach out. We're looking forward to, responding to all of the notifications in the coming days here. But let's move on. The second team here alphabetically that we're covering the deep dive and analysis of is the Boston Bruins. Now, I know that's a near and dear team to you in your heart, being a big Bruins fan, Panz. But do you want to go into some of the key players that we have for the Bruins?
Yep, so I'll start out with the key players for the beloved Boston Bruins. And starting out, Pasta, the big goal scorer. We'll see how many he can put up this year, but yeah, Boston almost entirely runs on Pasta. Leading the back end.
I thought they ran on Duncan, bro.
And Duncan runs on Pasta.
Yeah. I love that.
The workhorse on the back end, we got Charlie McAvoy, one of the best mid-first round picks of the recent generations. Of course, leading our captain, Brad Marchand. We have our new addition, Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, who, though we didn't get too many free agents this summer, I think those are two key guys who will step in very positively. I think the Bruins fan base are going to be very supportive of those two guys. And also in the back end, we have Hampus Lindholm to go with Elias. Not related, but another key piece. And of course, hopefully, contract pending, one of the best goalies in the league, Jeremy Swayman, in that. Anybody I missed out there, Ches?
Honestly, no. That's a great list. It's crazy to see how their roster has kind of shifted from a few off seasons ago when they lost Bertuzzi, Hall, Orlov, all these massive pieces. To be able to still be in a playoff situation as they were last season, a lot of people had them out of it. But now looking with what they're doing with some of their youngsters, it's clear the Boston Bruins have always been a strong juggernaut to worry about on the East in the last, we'll just say, 2 decades. Certainly in the last decade, and it doesn't seem like they're stopping. I'm looking forward to, again, with contract pending, Swayman being a huge, huge piece to their future. I think Pasta is one of the most dominant righties in the league, and he is. It's fun to watch him. It's fun to watch McAvoy. Those are definitely the big pieces I would mention. I would say a player that might have been in that key spot last season but might not make that list this season is Pavel Zacha. He's a centerman who did have his best stat line last season out of any of his years in his career, but I do look forward to maybe him taking less of a responsibility, less of the load that he needed to wear last season, and maybe fit in more of that second line guy, third line center, whatever that they need special team wise as well. I see him as an X factor player that can certainly shock some players or shock some teams around the league. But I think that addition of Elias Lindholm really, really solidifies their center. A lot of people were talking about how they needed center last season. I get that. Up the middle, adding a guy like Lindholm can only help both ways, offensively and defensively. But looking into some prospects, I'm curious what your thoughts are, being a bigger Bruins fan than I. My favorite prospect is Fabian Lysell. I think he's still underrated. He's a strong, very quick righty who's looking to potentially take on quite a decent role in minutes this season. I think losing a guy like DeBrusk was certainly a depth player that's gonna not hurt, but a depth player that provides an opening for a guy like Lysell. And guys like Matt Poitras, who are young guys who are still finding their game and can certainly be a key piece to this future around the young vets that they already have, and guys like Marchand, who's been here for quite some time. So on top of Fabian Lysell, I would mention Matt Poitras, as well as Mason Lowry. Oh my God. I think we all know he's been kind of sliding under the radar for a little bit. He is a big, dominant force on the blue line. It's just great to see. You see a lot of teams go through ebbs and flows, but to be able to have guys in the youth prospect pool coming up while you're still contending for cups year over year just really helps. I would like to mention Beecher as well as actually I think that's where my list would stop in terms of key pieces in the prospect pool there. Am I missing any prospects that you'd add there?
So it's kind of weird that you say key prospects in the prospect pool, because I kind of have Lowry, Poitras, and Beecher as graduating last year. So they are still young developmental pieces, but I think they're solidified their places with the big team, and it's kind of crazy that Lowry was still up and down throughout most of the season. Though Beecher went up and down a couple times as well, Lowry kind of solidified his place in the playoffs, showing that he was able to withstand that type of play, without having a full NHL season under his belt yet. And that's kind of where we saw him shine. And it's crazy for a young guy to play like that, to play his offensive defenseman style in the NHL playoffs. And just, you could see his confidence growing game in, game out. So I thought that was really fun to see last year, as well as Beecher, who scored the first goal for the Bruins.
Oh yeah. He's a beast too.
He's very underrated coming out of the draft by a lot of people, but I think he's currently a solid fourth line center. I think he's capable of moving up to the third line. A lot of people will argue that, but he has a really good scoring ability. He has great size and a lot of speed for a guy his size. The key prospects that I believe not many with our few draft picks that we do have, but our recent first-round pick, Dean Letourneau. Some would say it's a project pick since he was not playing the top-tier hockey that you are used to seeing from first-round draft picks like the CHL, the Liga. He has an incredible skill set. It showed in development camp this year, and I think it'll show in this upcoming season at Boston College that he is able to play with bigger, tougher guys. Very excited to watch him with other Bruins prospects in Oscar Yelvik and Andre Gasso, all at Boston College. Could possibly be the second line for Boston College. Very excited to watch them this season. Letourneau, I think, could be a very solid Tage Thompson type of forward.
Wow.
Incredible skill set at that size, and skating ability is also just amazing for someone his size at 6'5".
Well, that's quite a comparison. I look forward to seeing these youngsters really grow into their role, and having a team succeed the way they have been. The Bruins really helps these players feel comfortable. Lowry doesn't need to feel like he's necessarily needs to take on the world. He has guys like Charlie McAvoy. He's got guys like Lindholm with him on the blue line to help take that load off, make him feel comfortable. Just that's so important to young players. No matter what the role is, to feel comfortable to make the mistakes that they need to make, feel comfortable getting out of their shell and making a move that they might not necessarily, feel comfortable making because of the pressure that they have on their back end. I will say their defense is strong. Just looking at their offseason, it is an exciting upgrade with Elias Lindholm. We cannot understate the importance of adding a guy like Nikita Zadorov. He has shown time and time again, certainly in the offseason last year, what a strong offensive game he has on top of his defensive side. He is a beast. He's a hard player to move. He is a guy I would not want to take a hit from, but his shot, his two-way game has really developed, and the team like Boston, I mean, I know he doesn't want to wear Big Z's number, but he doesn't like being called Big Z either. But that said, he is going to be a huge piece to the future here. I like the value of his contract as well. He's going to really help tie in that blue line. Their big four look great on the blue line. And then, of course, I know Jeremy Swayman's looking at a little north of $10 million AAV in his new contract. I don't think anyone out there is going to tell him that he doesn't deserve that. I think you and I both agree that Swayman is worth every penny in terms of investment. It looks like they've already established that with regards to getting a deal with Ullmark moved. I mean, that had to me shows that they are all in on Jeremy Swayman. I do look forward to that. I think Marchand, you mentioned something to me earlier. You texted me something about Marchand getting some injuries. I know he took a little bit of a dip last season in productivity, necessarily just because we're so used to him being one of the top guys in the league. Not that he wasn't last season. It just did seem to dip. You think that was age, or do you think that was more on some of these injuries?
So I do agree with you that I did see kind of a dip in his game, and throughout the season I kind of just chalked it up to age without knowing of these key injuries that he played with throughout the entire season. The other two developed later in the season, but I believe that was the major cause of the regression being the injuries. So hopeful to see the normal hard-hitting, hard-scrapping, and Marchand that we're used to seeing. It was mostly the scoring that kind of dipped last year, but I think he's able to climb right back.
I agree, man.
I thought you had a very good projection for what the Bruins are going to do and what they have done this offseason. I think Lindholm is a very solid piece. Elias Lindholm up the middle. Though he had a tough season last year, the 2 seasons before that, he ended up playing 160 3 of the 164 regular season games.
Holy cow.
And during that time, he averaged 73 points, 32 goals, and 41 assists in 81 games.
I mean, that for a two-way player, you want that any day of the week. I mean, that
exactly.
He's going to be
very
great.
Excited. Just hopefully he can get back to that pace with playing with Pastrnak or Zacha. Most likely, those two together those three will be the first line.
Mm-hmm. And we can't even we forgot to mention guys on the back end like Brandon Carlo. I mean, talk about just a beast. I think they might be one of the biggest teams on the blue line. I think Charlie McAvoy earlier today was joking. He's the smallest guy on the blue line for that team, which is funny.
What, 6'1", 210, 220?
Yeah, I mean he's still someone who, man, he's a dangerous guy when he has the puck. But Brandon Carlo is a strong player that we watched grow out of his, take a step up in his game last season. In terms of trade options, man, I don't necessarily see anyone jumping the gun in the Bruins organization to get out. I think they're still in a contender space. Trade options could be one of their youth players, could be one of their depths, forwards or defenders. I don't necessarily see a name. I think Marchand would want to finish his time out there, but there's always a chance, vets might want to, go somewhere and play and have a chance at a cup if the Bruins ever do digress and down in standings. But, I do think when it comes to concerns to watch for from last season, they've addressed it. The concern that I really saw from last season wasn't goaltending, wasn't necessarily defending. It was their depth scoring. Pasta's sick. Marchand is filthy in his own right. We all know that. But those two shouldn't be carrying the load of four lines. And it didn't seem like they had as strong of support. Now, losing guys like DeBrus didn't help either. But adding a guy like Lindholm, having a guy like Zacha take less of a role or less time or more special teams, I should say, and special responsibility can really help with regards to that, as well as giving the reins to some of these younger players like Poitras, Lassell, Beecher to get some more time on the special teams units. The depth scoring is certainly going to be better this season. How much, we'll see. But are there any stats you pulled from last season that are worth diving into?
So the stats that I do have, they were 11% shooting percentage, which was 7th in the league, beating out the Rangers and Edmonton.
Oh wow! Wait, really? Holy cow!
Yeah.
That you know what that means, right? Pasta's fucking accurate. He don't miss.
Yeah, he does not miss. No. They had 221 goals against, which was tied for the 6th least with Vancouver.
That's saying something, considering they were coming off this season where they lost Orlov. I think they had Shattenkirk as a main piece they were leaning on last season. But Vancouver, yep. I mean, we all know how dominant of a season they had. So that's pretty impressive. 6th. Anything else that we missed in terms of interesting stats?
So I had one more interesting stat where they had team save percentage of a .915, which was 3rd behind the Panthers and the Vezina winner Jets.
Wow. I mean, yeah, Panthers won the cup, and God, Bob was on a different universe last year. And, I mean, we all know Hellebuck won the Vezina for a reason. He's a stud. So I don't think that necessarily was Ullmark. I think I should say a lot of that could have been, the tandem set of Swayman and Ullmark. But that said, that's really exciting. Swayman has certainly proven himself. And we can't forget about Busey, the young stud goalie that they have, which maybe was a huge motivational factor of why they felt comfortable moving from Ullmark, having such a young guy like Busey to take on, more of a role. I'm excited to see him. He's going to be one of my players that I'm looking at this season from the Bruins, playing, maybe not obviously as many minutes as Ullmark in a 1A, 1B situation, but he's certainly proven himself in the AHL to be a dominant force. And holy cow, it'll be fun to watch him and Swayman. Not sure if we'll be seeing any more big hugs at the end of the season or at end of games, but they do have what I like to think one of the best young goalies, coming up in the systems. of all teams in the league, aside from Jeremy Swayman,
So,
who's young in his
there,
own right. So
yeah, there were two main points that I kind of missed out on that I'm just now remembering, and one was the goaltending situation. Um, the Bruins have kind of a well-known goalie development system with their top goalie coach, goalie Bob Esna. The Bruins have turned out a lot of solid goalies in recent years. Tuukka Rask, Swayman, even Dan Vladar, he was out in Calgary. Um, so I believe Jonas Korpisalo has a chance to return to his former looking self and be a top goalie again. I do also believe Brandon Busey has kind of forced himself into an NHL spot with how incredible he's been playing in the AHL. And to be quite frank, with his 6'5" size, he's one of the only other goalies I've seen be able to move so incredible like Vasilevsky at that type of size. So I think
I love that.
even if something horrible happens with Swayman somehow not coming back, I'm still extremely confident in the Bruins goaltending.
6'5" is no joke, dude.
No, and he moves incredibly well. And yeah, he's a very, very good goalie who deserves a chance in the NHL now.
Well, with that bolstered up blue line, I think he'll have a decent transition into the league as well. We'll see.
Exactly.
But it's certainly something we'll be reporting on throughout the season.
And my other key point for the Bruins, with losing Jake DeBrusk and not truly replacing him, the Bruins currently have an open spot for a top six winger, and they're hoping 3 prospect rookies one of them will fill the role in training camp, and those 3 being Fabian Lysell. I think he is the front runner. He's my favorite to win the spot for the big club. Skilled, speedy, Swedish youngster who has a great shot, incredible passing ability. He developed quite a bit this year in the AHL. I think he's going to be a solid NHL player. The other competitors being Georgi Merkulov, who was one of the top point scorers in the entire AHL last season. Merkulov kind of plays a Draisaitl game. He has an absolutely wicked shot, incredible one-timer lefty, good passing ability, but uses more of that power forward role, plays with his size, uses it to his ability to box people out. And the third competitor being Providence College, Riley Durand. Now, Durand is very interesting because he's not a very big name. I believe he's a former 4th-round draft pick, but each and every year he has grown incredibly, and he also plays that power forward type role with a very solid shot. He's great defensively, great passes. All of his coaches have raved about his locker room presence and what a great teammate he is. So I'm very hopeful for whatever one of those 3 fills the role. Very big fans of all 3 of them.
That's exciting.
Very excited to see the team that comes out of the training camp, and excited for this season as a whole for the Bruins.
I know you'll be watching closely. We will as well. We'll be providing some throughout the season analysis on each team and where they're going and where hot takes and cold takes to expect in the coming weeks. But I think we've done a lot with the Bruins. I do want to switch gears. We do have one more team we want to cover here on this episode. It will be the Buffalo Sabres. They're next on the list and order that we have here. Covering their top players. I'm going to start. I think we all know one of their top players, Tage Thompson, such a dominating player. Despite a small stick, I am a part of the small stick gang, way smaller than the average in terms of, everyone always measuring it up to the chin or to the nose. He uses a smaller twig, and it seems to have worked immensely for him. He has some of the nicest hands for someone his size. I would add Dylan Cozens Alex Tuck, Rasmus Dahlin, JJ Paterka, and Owen Power to that list of top players. Am I missing anyone there, Pans?
No, those are all the top players I have. I completely agree. Tage Thompson, deadly force, a little bit of a down season. I believe their season relies heavily on how his game pans out. But no, those are all the top players I had. Moving
I
in
like that.
to the top prospects, I had Zach Benson, who I kind of think might make the team out of camp. Very skilled, smaller type of winger.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Quinn, also smaller wing. I believe he's a centerman. Also fighting for a spot out of training camp, but I think unfortunately he'll spend the beginning of the season at least in Rochester to start. And lastly, for top prospects, I have Devin Levi. He is an incredible goalie who somehow year after year has just keep getting better and better and forcing himself into the NHL role. I think getting more solid starts in the AHL is only good for him until he's ready with a little bit better team in front of him to blossom into the NHL goalie that he can. Any top prospects that I missed?
Honestly, man, no, you hit it on the head. I think you're right with Benson. He's really turned some heads. Jack Quinn, it's one of these years where we're really going to look to see him make a step up and hopefully be an impactful player. JJ Paterka was a shocker for us last season. I think, players like Tuck Thompson and Cousins need to be leaders. They need to be the stat leaders because, to be honest with you, that's going to be the reason behind them making the playoffs or not. I will mention that Devin Levi is great. I will say there was one more prospect that's worth mentioning, Yuri Kulich. He is someone that would be added onto that list for prospects in the Buffalo Sabres franchise. They are a younger team. I don't necessarily know too much on Yuri Kulich, but a strong prospect to add. He's a recent addition here. And obviously, during any type of situation where it might not necessarily be a rebuild, but they're pushing for the playoffs. I know people were let down a little bit for them not being in a playoff spot or even contending for one last season, but it's good to see some young players in their pipeline. We all know Devin Levi has a large ceiling that we're looking forward to him reaching. But diving into some of the offseason situations that kind of came about, they did trade Skinner away, which was really great. They were able to get a lot of his, that high contract that was really overpaid, over to, get that off their books. They did add Abe Kubel, Ryan McLeod, and Sam Lafferty, as well as Jason Zucker. These are four players that are going to really help bolster their middle six. I think Sabres fans have a lot to look forward to. I imagine that's going to take a little weight off of Tage Thompson and Dylan Cozens. They can have some supporting pieces like Zucker, who's a strong player to have on like a power play unit, whether it be one or two. And then Sam Lafferty, who's, in my opinion, one of my favorite penalty killers in the entire league. And Abe Kubel, who's got some strength on both ends of the ice and can really be a deciding factor and kind of an X factor player that people would sleep on, as he kind of fits in whatever role they put him in. I know that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was someone that we are looking forward to watching, as well as Devin Levi. Those two are really exciting young players in the goalie in the crease there for Buffalo. As well as, of course, we know the future of Dahlin and Owen Power. It's really exciting to see Owen Power and Dahlin to be two first overall picks on the blue line. Rarely do you see ever a team have them, let alone at the same time. It's just really, really exciting for them to grow together. Anything else in regards to their goaltending or defense that you'd add there, Pans?
Well, their defense is only getting better and better. I like a lot of guys that they have. They brought in Bowen Byram this offseason.
That's right.
I really love Rasmus Dahlin in this play. Owen Power, truly a great player, is only going to keep getting better and better. Matthias Samuelsson is a great top 4, top 6 defensemen. Connor Clifton, I think, is also a great third pairing defenseman, solid guy for the team. Goaltending, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, one of my favorite goaltending prospects, and he is a very solid goalie, and it's tough to truly see how great he can be with the team playing in front of him the way that they do. But I think both him and Devin Levi are solid goalie prospects that have bright futures ahead of them. I'm hopeful for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to really take a step up this season and prove his value. But
I agree.
No, you were pretty much spot on with that.
Yeah, I love that. Moving into the trade pieces, potential trade pieces, and some of the interesting stats. I have Devin Levi as a potential trade piece, and Jack Quinn, just being that two players that have value. If there's any type of stale plateau in their game at all in the first half of the season, if I were a leader in the front office there, I would look at the value that they bring and how they can be a strong fit, and what you can get in return for a guy like Levi in the crease as a young guy, for teams to build around, and for that matter, Jack Quinn. I think there's a few others, but those two were the two that we picked. And then I did want to dive into some of these interesting stats. Um, we talked about depth scoring. That's certainly a concern we need to see. I would say scoring consistency for the top six is important, and goaltending, as you mentioned. One of the interesting stats is last season they were at 16.6% on the power play, which was fourth worst. There were a lot of stats that were middle of the road, but you can't be the fourth worst power play and expect a long successful season. Certainly not in the postseason. And then the other piece, that was a little interesting was they have 2.96 goals against per game, which is 11th in the league, which was behind Edmonton. But Edmonton, as we talked about earlier in this episode, like they have the scoring, they have an incredible team in front of their goalies. So goals against average is one thing, but if you're balancing out with goals, that's another. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it was happening for them in Buffalo last season, but maybe that happens to grow in the coming season up ahead. And then the last bit of stat that I wanted to share here was they had 2,402 shots against, so that's ninth, which is it's impressive for a team that wasn't close to the playoffs. They weren't a top 16 team to make the playoffs. Ninth in the league. What that means is, and you alluded to this, man, it talks about the strength of their D. It talks about how important it is to have a guy like Rasmus Dahlin to lean on, and Owen Power coming into their games to be not only good defensemen, but league leaders potentially in their own right. And I love that's a stat from last season, despite the ending disappointment of the I guess overall outcome. But looking forward to seeing kind of how that translates this season. Is there anything else you'd add there on the stats there, Panz?
No, it's very hard to believe so that they had the fourth worst power play percentage at 16.6 with all the skilled forwards and defensemen that they have. That one was eye-opening to me. And yes, as you said, the last one, having the ninth least amount of shots against speaks to the defense. So hopefully they can keep the shots against that low and just move forward with better penalty killing and better power plays, and hopefully a brighter future in Buffalo.
Well, couldn't agree more there, brother. It's been a pleasure. Want to thank you all for tuning in to our first episode of the Chalk Talk podcast here, brought to you by capwizard.io. Please give us a follow, like, share, retweet anything that you think is interesting. We are curious to hear your thoughts on some of the takes we had today. We will be following up with an episode here next week, and we'll be covering some more teams and deep dive into the analysis of their offseason and what to look forward to this season. But without further ado, let's call it for this episode here, Pans. Always fun. Always love chopping it up with you and talking hockey. And until next time, buddy.
An absolute pleasure, Ches. We'll be talking soon.